Welcome back, everybody. This is Todd Sylvester with the Todd Sylvester Inspires Belief Cast. I have Phil Rogers on with us this morning. Thank you for being here.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, I'm excited to have you on, and I'm excited to have you share your story. I've known you for years now. I guess going on 3 or 4 years, and you've been through a lot, and you've overcome a lot, and I'm excited because most of our listeners have kind of been through some of the similar things, and so. But I do have to give a shout out to our sponsor, Veracity Networks. They're a great company. Drew Peterson is the founder and CEO of that company, and he's made that possible. So I need to thank them for allowing us to get this out there to more people. And so a lot of people are going to hear this story today, and I'm excited for that. So, and then thank you, listeners, for joining in. Appreciate it so much. So Phil, here, let's just get right into it, man. How's things going?
Things are going good.
Yeah.
Yeah. I can't believe that I'm flattered that you asked me to share my story. I'm a big fan of the Belief Cast, and it's helped me immensely in my life.
Yeah, and you brought that up to me several times, and I was really, touched as well that you said, hey, I listened to this one and really, really enjoyed that one, and so I knew that you were a fan, and that was felt really good to me that you were that supportive. But, it hit me the other day. I'm like, man, he's got such an amazing story. I need to get him on here. I mean, like, why isn't he on here? So, but yeah, you've been through addiction. You've struggled with bipolar, which you're very open about. And we're going to talk about that as well, which I'm glad. I mean, you even said that before we even got on air here that, hey, let's talk about this, because not a lot of people talk about that. It's almost kind of like taboo.
Yeah. There's not a lot of information out there.
I may even get, share some things on my end as well along those lines. Mm-hmm. But why don't we start, like, where did you grow up? Tell us a little bit about your family.
Yeah. So I grew up in Utah County. I have 2 brothers, 2 sisters. I grew up in kind of a traditional Mormon Mormon home, and we had I'd say a pretty regular childhood.
Right.
My dad was self-employed all of his life. He was a carpenter. My mom stayed at home, raised kids, and I fit in. I'm the youngest of 5.
Right on.
So, yeah.
Did you like being the youngest?
I did. I don't know any different.
Yeah, that's true.
But so I guess some of the younger or the youngest siblings out there can relate to maybe their brothers and sisters giving them a little bit of grief over being the youngest, because maybe you had different opportunities when you were when you were the youngest child, instead of maybe being the oldest child, having to sacrifice a little bit more that way.
Yeah.
But no, all my brothers and sisters they're all loving, and
that's great.
Yeah. Pleasant Grove was where I was born in California, but we moved here when I was 3, and I've been there the rest of my life.
Right on.
Yeah.
So growing up, obviously it sounds like you had a pretty good childhood and this and that, but obviously we all go through some struggles, and let's talk a little bit about some of those. And I know, let's just get right into that, because I think, me knowing your story, I think this is going to be really critical for people to hear this. And so growing up, what were some of the battles that you were struggling with as a kid? Maybe some belief systems that were irrational, but yet kind of held you back.
Yeah, sure. When I was, I grew up feeling, I think that, I feel like religion can, if you interpret religion a certain way, you can create some of these belief systems that are really detrimental,
right,
to yourself, and I know that's the same with anything, whether you're in whether it's a religious belief or not. However, when I was growing up, I have a one of my earliest childhood memories is I was exposed to some pornography when I was about 5 years old, 4 or 5 years old, and it was a really, really traumatic experience for me. I was
five. Did you say 5 years old?
5 years old.
So was it like, did someone show it to you?
Yeah. So
Okay.
so what had happened was, is somebody was what had happened was a family member was looking at some pornography.
Oh, okay.
They were watching it. I mean, so when I'm 5, they didn't have iPads and phones and stuff like that. So it's
Right.
like the nearest TV was your station, and so I was sleeping on the couch, and they decided that they would, look at and watch some pornography on the television. And I remember just waking up and seeing this that was on what was going on the
Right.
screen.
Yeah.
And I can still remember it to this date, who it was and what it was. It impacted me, but
Yeah, it's interesting. Real quick, it's interesting you say that. Most people that I've worked with client-wise who have struggled with pornography, they can always remember the day, the time, what it was when they first saw it.
mm-hmm.
And the reason for that is that it's so almost even traumatic.
Yeah.
It's kind of like going through a traumatic event. You don't forget that.
No.
It's kind of the same
Yeah.
same experience. And as a 5-year-old, you're going, what is this stuff, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, and you're having all these feelings that you, number one, I don't think, any 5-year-old or anybody should be going through these feelings, let alone being
Right.
able to process what these feelings are.
Exactly.
And why you're feeling this way. But I just remember feeling, a tremendous amount of guilt after seeing that and going through that experience. I think that I was ashamed of it, and I think those were some of my earliest memories of feeling those ashamed feelings, or feeling like I'm not good, or I did something bad.
Right.
So
Wow.
yeah.
Yeah. Again, tough to see that at that age.
Yeah.
So you're 5 years old when that happens. Did you see it? I mean, when was the next time you came across it, if at all? I mean, was there issues with that as you got older?
Yeah. I think that seeing that led to more curiosity.
Mm-hmm.
And I think I was always more curious about girls and
Right.
and whatnot because of that experience. And I remember it wasn't very it wasn't too much later that I did have an experience where me and one of the neighbor girls were just we were hanging out, we were playing together, and
Mm-hmm.
one thing led to another, and we were being curious kids, and I share that because it ties into another experience that ended up happening a year or so later. But I don't think I would have had that. I don't think I would have had that curiosity
Had I not seen
that.
Right. Sure.
And so, but I always remember feeling bad. I felt bad though after,
Right.
you know, at the time it was a curious thing, and then afterwards it felt bad. It
Right.
felt really bad, you know.
Yeah. Did you ever tell anyone about it at the time? I mean, you're young. You probably, I don't know. Usually you don't think, I'm going to go tell someone
Yeah.
at that age, especially.
Yeah.
I don't know if, I mean, did you ever eventually say, hey, man, to
You know
anybody?
what? No, I
No.
didn't.
Yeah.
Not at that time. I did. This, you know, this led to multiple experiences and things. And but at the time, I didn't. But fast forward, when the neighbor girl and I were, when we were going through our experience, I remember ending up, our parents found out at some,
And something had happened.
and
Yeah.
something had happened, you know, and we didn't go, you know, it wasn't a bunch of details or whatnot, but when it ended up coming out, and that information kind of got out there to you know, her parents knew, my parents knew, and then some other people knew as well. So some other
Okay.
people in my neighborhood,
Gotcha.
you know. And so, but
And how old are you at this time?
I was probably 6. you know.
Really?
Yeah.
So you're still young.
Yeah.
Okay.
I was still really young.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And so, you know, fast forward a couple of years later, and fast forward a couple years later, I was probably 8 or 9 years old, and I ended up kind of piecing this together after the fact, but I had a friend who, you know, he was my best friend. He was in the neighborhood. We were a tight-knit neighborhood, you know. And one day he decided he wanted to smoke a cigarette.
Mm-hmm.
So he took one of his brother's cigarettes, and we went down into this orchard, and you know, he had this cigarette. He asked me if I wanted to smoke it. I said, yeah, I'll try it, you know.
Yeah.
And you know, I was a little apprehensive, and I knew that it wasn't a good thing, but I did it anyway. And I remember smoking that first cigarette, and getting really buzzed from that cigarette.
Yeah.
I didn't feel good at all. I was
Yeah.
I remember feeling like I wanted to throw up.
Yeah. As a young kid, that's powerful. All that nicotine
Yeah.
that you're not used to ever having. Yeah.
Yeah. And so one thing led to another, and he ended up, we were in a situation, and he ended up trying to basically take advantage of me sexually.
Oh, okay.
And you know, looking back now, I can see that, you know, I'm sure that he knew about what had happened with the neighbor girl, and you can kind of start to see how certain situations can happen.
Right.
You know, that you can be involved in certain situations with certain people because they know certain things, and
Yeah.
you know, that type of thing. And it wasn't about, I don't know, 6 months later that the same kid's brother decided to expose himself to us, and there was a couple of us. So I had some, some sexual trauma that happened to me, and I think that, part of it was, I think a lot of it stemmed from, being exposed to pornography from
So
from an
young.
early age, for sure.
Yeah, but also, yeah, as you're telling me this story, this guy took advantage of you, you young kid, and I mean, you're vulnerable at that age, and you don't know, I mean, I guess I wouldn't blame that because you saw pornography, but at the same time, I mean, I know that led to being curious down the road a little bit, but at the same time, that guy shouldn't have done that, obviously, to you and took advantage of that. So when that happened, was it a continual thing or was it a one-time thing?
No, it was a one-time thing.
Okay. Did you let anyone know at the time that, hey, something happened?
Yeah.
Okay.
I did. I did, and back then the way that things were handled back then were maybe, I think, a little bit different than how we would handle them nowadays. But his parents, there was a meeting. His parents were involved,
Right.
but it was one of these things where it was like, his parents were going through a divorce, and he was struggling, and so it was kind of one of those situations where you're trying to have compassion and empathy for a situation, but
Sure.
you don't know how much.
Right.
Sometimes it's hard to gauge
Yeah.
that
Absolutely.
that balance, of you don't want it to keep happening either to other people,
Yeah.
or
Right.
whatnot, but you don't want to.
So at this point, you've had that experience at 5 years old and 6, and then this, and you smoke your first cigarette, and you're going through all that. How old are you after this experience? How old are you now?
So I'm probably, after I smoked the cigarette,
And then when that kid took advantage of you,
yeah,
how old were you?
I was probably, I don't know, 9 or 10.
Oh, so you've been through a lot already, and you're not even 10 years old yet.
Yeah, it was.
Wow.
It was. I didn't know. I mean, I didn't know any different.
Well, yeah,
though,
you didn't know any different, but you even said you started feeling bad and guilty, about some things, which anyone going through that would relate and go, yeah, that's a common thing.
Mm-hmm.
So what was some of the beliefs you started forming at that young of an age about the world and about life? And can you remember what some of those might be that were kind of holding you back a little bit?
I just remember hearing other people talk and getting to know other people, and them not having any kind of those experiences in their life.
Right.
Which made me feel like I was definitely different.
Right.
But
like something might be wrong with me.
Something was maybe wrong with me.
Yeah.
And so I remember that. I remember flashing back on those traumatic experiences often and feeling that way.
Wow. Yeah, I can't even imagine. I mean, someone that young going through that and then happen to, realizing that this doesn't happen to everyone. Why did it happen to me?
Mm-hmm.
So I think it makes sense that you would have those thoughts of, man, maybe I am a little different, and why am I not good enough or whatever?
Yeah. Yeah.
And we all go through that on some level, but someone who's been abused like you had been, it only magnifies it 100 times.
Right.
Right. So, so after it came out, and then people knew. Let's start from that point forward. How did you start handling that, and then let's jump forward into like maybe how you handled this through junior high and high school.
Yeah. Eventually that boy, or he moved away, that friend.
Right.
And that family. And so some of that reminder of that wasn't as strong. But yeah, I didn't have any more experiences that way. But I remember, I always remember having this belief, and this one just stemmed from, I struggled with ADD, and so I was always, always trying to get attention, maybe the wrong way,
Right.
in school,
Yeah.
being kind of a nuisance to the teacher, or but so from a an early age in elementary school, and then in junior high, academics didn't come. It wasn't something that came really easily to me, and so I remember having a belief that I was stupid,
Mhm.
as
Right.
some of us do, or many of
Right.
us do, and but so I going on to maybe into junior high, I I liked many different things. I liked motorcycle racing. I used to race BMX. I played baseball and played soccer, and
Right.
just normal kid stuff, and but yeah, I didn't. Junior high was pretty normal, other than just the regular
The normal struggles kids go
struggles.
through. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
The minefield we all tried to walk through in junior high.
Right, exactly.
Right.
Yeah. So,
So, but you started recognizing you just had this kind of feeling or belief that I'm just not smart
yeah,
and I'm stupid. I can't get what other kids are getting, and
yeah.
then did that carry over into high school? Did you kind of have that same belief
Yeah.
as you moved forward?
Yeah, but I kind of caught a break in ninth grade. In ninth grade, I got the opportunity to try out for the ninth grade, or the freshman baseball team, and the coach pulled me aside and said, "Hey, if we put you on the team," because I wasn't one of the kids that had been maybe coming up in the on the other teams that they knew of, they saw play, and he said, "If we put you on the team, I need you to promise me you'll make it to every practice,
Right.
and you'll give it everything you have,
Yeah.
And I did, and that changed my world.
Really?
Yeah.
How so? Like,
It gave me some like a sense of belonging.
yeah.
I think it gave me this confidence that I didn't have before. That they wanted me
Yeah.
to be on this team,
Yeah.
and
Maybe there is nothing wrong with me.
yeah, maybe there is nothing wrong
Yeah.
with me.
Yeah, and I love that you say this, because this, as we heard your, I know there's more to your story, obviously, but, growing up and what you've been through, thinking that something was wrong with you on some level because of what you had gone through, and then you get this opportunity to be on this team, and it was almost like, hey, I'm okay,
Yeah,
and I get to connect with some people in a more healthy way, and boy, that had to felt really, really good at the time.
yeah. I mean, it was like it fueled the fire that
Right.
that I had, and it filled the void that I was missing at that point in my life, for
Right.
sure. And I
Yeah.
had no idea at the time the magnitude of how that would carry over into high school, and
Yeah.
and kind of that it became my everything, and it became everything I I worked for, and
Yeah.
it became everything I focused
So you
on.
continued playing throughout high school?
I did. Mm-hmm.
Right.
Yeah.
And and I would imagine your confidence just kept increasing because of that. And
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. I remember getting into the gym, you know, and what that did, and the confidence that gave me, and I ended up playing on a traveling team at the time for all of Utah, and I remember I did well enough that I was offered a scholarship down to CCSN, and
What position were you playing?
I played right field.
Right field. Okay.
Yeah. And you know, that was just, you know, coming from a pretty strong belief system of, you know, being ashamed of myself, and maybe I'm not a good person because I'm seeing, you know, I've seen these things, or I've done these things.
Yeah.
And you know, that really changed my perspective on life. And
well, you know, imagine getting a scholarship, and I can relate to that because, you know, I received one too, but then I lost it. But that's a whole nother story.
Yeah.
But yeah, and we can talk about what
Mm-hmm.
happened to yours as well. But in that moment, it's almost like, man, life is amazing, life is good.
Yeah.
I achieved this goal that I was shooting for, and
Mm-hmm.
and just that euphoric feeling, even if it's just for a minute, but at least you're like going, wow.
Yeah.
You know. So I can only imagine what you had been through to have that experience. That, man, I've worked hard. Look what I've achieved.
Yeah. And you know, at the time, I think every kid goes through this. At least I did. You know, am I good? Am I really that good? Am I good enough for this? You know, am I good enough for a scholar? And then when somebody, like you said, somebody validates that,
Yeah.
it's a euphoric feeling.
Yeah,
that
you're like, wow.
just like,
yeah.
wow. Yeah.
Right on.
So
you go down there to the college there?
I didn't. I ended up so my the beginning of my senior year, I started having hamstring problems. Could never get my hamstrings loose. Felt like I pulled my right hamstring, and I could never get it to stretch out. I went to therapy, and what have you, and it never got better. I ended up still playing on it anyways. And then that pain moved from my hamstring into my lower back. And that's when everything kind of started to fall apart for me, my senior year.
Okay.
And so I remember going to different doctors and trying to figure out what's
going
chiropractors.
on.
Yeah,
Right.
you know, everything you can think of.
Yeah, right.
And I had a TINS unit I used to sleep with. And anyways, it I could never get better. So I ended up starting to not being able to practice as long as I did before. You know, I was always the first one there, and I was always the last one to leave.
Right.
And then that stopped happening because I was in so much pain from standing there, and just
Right.
it was bad. From running, it was a jarring sensation. It hurt. You know, so I remember getting some somas from the doctor.
Right.
I remember getting hadn't really given me any pain pills at this point, but like non-narcotic pain pills, you know, Ultram or stuff like that.
Right.
Anyways, I was really never the same, and the medicines never really helped. But eventually I needed stronger medicine and stuff like that. And I remember that I ended up needing to get my wisdom teeth pulled out, and I was prescribed Lortabs.
Okay. Yeah.
And I remember taking the Lortabs and, telling my mom, "Hey, I'm going to practice," because it was a day that we had practice.
Right.
And I went down there, and the coach was like, "What are you doing here?" I'm like, "I'm here to practice.
I'm here to play. Here we
Didn't
go."
you have your wisdom teeth out today? And I said, "Yeah, I'm good." And he's like, "No, you're not good. You need to go home, and you need to rest."
This is the day of the surgery?
Day of the surgery. I mean, it was just hours after it happened.
Yeah, your coach was like, no, go home.
Yeah, no, go home. I mean, he knew
Right.
what was going on, But I remember in that moment that my hamstring and my back didn't hurt.
And
And it wasn't. It's funny how that works, but it's not a direct. It wasn't a direct. It wasn't like, "Hey, I'm going to take this Lortabs because my hamstring hurt." It was, I just had this surgery.
Yeah, right.
But then you start putting these, you start putting it together, and, anyways, I ended up still not, using those pain pills, but I remember, months later that a friend had some pain pills, and I was complaining about my hamstring, and he said, "Here, take one. It'll help you," and I did, and it helped, and I didn't start taking the pain pills, to play games or anything like that, but I was starting to take them on the weekends, and I'd take a Lortab. He'd steal them from his grandma, or
Right.
Stuff like that.
Yeah.
And that was the start of dabbling into pain pills
And abusing
and
them.
abusing them.
Yeah.
And then, really then having having my hamstring, which was actually a back problem, that I ended up getting a fusion done on my lower back, but at the time, it just led to this cycle of pain pills.
Right.
And I ended up, kind of losing sight of what was important with that scholarship, and
Wow.
that's kind of how I lost it.
So that's you end up losing the scholarship. So when that happened, when you lost the scholarship, what, if you can remember, kind of describe what you were feeling at that point? Did you revert back to some of those old beliefs, like, look, here I am screwing this up, and I'm not, who does that kind of thing? I don't know.
Yeah.
Just curious what was going through your mind.
I remember distinctively feeling like, I know how I had insecurities with that situation, and I remember distinctively trying to drown them out with pain pills.
More pain pills.
And that's kind of how I started to try. That's kind of how I navigated those feelings at the time. Was
this hurts to feel this way.
This hurts to feel this way.
You know what? These were working for that. I'll try this, and I'm going to start. Gotcha.
My back hurts anyways.
Yeah. Justify it.
Yeah. This helps, and so, but yeah, that was an experience that, I look back on, and I think that, I think of things I could have done differently, for sure. And I wish I would have communicated a little better with my coaches, with my parents, but I wouldn't say that I do believe everything happens for a reason.
Yeah.
And
Yeah. Yeah. Life happens for us.
life happens for
Yeah.
us.
Absolutely. Wow. So now, I mean, this opened up the door to, just kind of the path of addiction for you.
Yeah.
And I know that's a long story too in itself, but let's kind of just touch base a little bit on that about, what that led to. And then ultimately, because when I first met you, it was here at Wasatch Recovery.
Yeah.
I didn't know you before all that, but I know you now.
Right.
And how good you're doing now and how much you've overcome, which is really remarkable, because I want to get to that point. But
Thanks.
tell us a little bit about, just briefly, this obviously led to a full-blown addiction in other things and everything else.
Yeah.
And then talk a little bit about the bipolar diagnosis and all that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So, so it just kind of jumping fast forward here is, I ended up, on a road to figuring out, hey, I've got to fix this back problem because I can't move forward with this pain. And it was bad. And so I have the surgery, and after my surgery, that's when I met my wife, and she could see that how addicted I was to the medication. She could see that I was being overprescribed, and
Right.
she knew what she was doing at the time. I didn't necessarily, but she started actually working with my doctors and weaning me down
because she could see what was going on.
Yeah, exactly. So I get off of pain pills, and I'm off of them, and I'd slip up here and there,
right?
And not minimizing anything, but I'd have these little bouts, I might, but eventually it led me back to a pain clinic, and eventually it led me back to, being on pain medicine again.
Right.
And I look back now, I can tell for what I was doing to myself and my body, I wasn't doing myself any favors by how the things I was doing. I was creating pain for myself all the time, and I never really could get away from those pain clinics because I was always in pain.
Right.
But I ended up going to a pain clinic, and they prescribed me some Suboxone, and I got on Suboxone for 6-7 years.
Wow.
And I ended up I was on Suboxone, and I was on Adderall, and I was smoking a lot of pot, and I just knew that I didn't feel good. I knew that I just had this feeling like I just need to get off of this medicine. I just need to get off of this. And that was really it was kind of like the first time that I'd felt like that. But at the time, I just said to myself, I'm just going to get off of this stuff. And I quit taking everything cold turkey. And I was on, it was part of my routine for a lot of years. And I put all my stuff in a 5-gallon bucket, and I threw it in the dumpster. And 2 days later, I was jumping back in the dumpster,
grabbing that
because I was withdrawing so bad. And I remember smoking a little pot to try and make myself feel a little better.
Right.
And I ended up what ended up happening was I was so out of balance that my body was just going through withdrawal so bad, and I hadn't slept for days, and I ended up having a manic episode. And I ended up it eventually ended up in a fight with some people that were outside.
Right.
And I was tackled, and I was detained and brought to the ER, and they were asking me what drugs I was on, and I told them, and they said, "You got to be on something more than that, because what's going on, and you're not with it."
Yeah.
And that was the first time that I had a manic episode, and that was the first time that I'd ever experienced something that lavish with bipolar.
Right.
And so,
is that what they ended up diagnosing you as when they, as you were there for a minute? That's what they kind of said.
No, so they didn't there.
They didn't there. Okay.
When I came here to Wasatch, that's when
Gotcha.
Dr. Birch diagnosed me.
Gotcha.
Because of that
right.
incident.
Sure.
And it was hard for us to try and it was hard for us to come to grips or understand whether or not you have, do I really have bipolar or not, because I've had, and I know you know what I'm talking about.
Sure.
I've had this one isolated incident. It was really bad, and it was hallucinating, and I didn't know what reality was for days, and things like that. But was that just a one
right.
time?
Yeah.
Drug
was it lack of sleep and drug induced and all of that was playing a part in that moment? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. So that loop, that loop, and that type of thinking, and some of those things, talking a little bit about bipolar. Most people who have bipolar will go through that thought process of, do I really have it? I don't want to have it.
Right.
I don't need medicine. You have to constantly, there's this check and balance of like, what's my life like when I'm not on medication, and what's my life like when I am on medication, or right. seeking some sort of treatment for it. Maybe medicine isn't just the the only cure, but coming here to Wasatch, I eventually started to kind of get my bearings about myself, trying some medications and being patient with them, and having a patient family and a patient spouse that gave me time to to digest all this, and to get on track. And it's definitely been a journey, for sure.
Yeah.
And I'm still on it. We
sure.
all are. And
yeah.
But I can honestly, how I am today, and how I was when I first came in here. I couldn't even put a sentence together.
Yeah.
I really couldn't.
Yeah. And what's amazing is people who know you now would be a little surprised to hear you say that, and I've seen both when you got here, and then, even though I had left a little bit for a minute, but I knew you back then as well. And we had met a couple times, actually, and then I'd left, but to see you now and what you're doing, and I mean, those who know you know that you're one of the nicest guys. You have a great attitude. Anything you've ever asked to do here at Wasatch, you do it without hesitation. It just, I don't know, you're just this genuinely nice human being, and
Thanks.
who's been through a lot
Yeah.
and some struggles. And like you said, you're still on that journey, and you're still working through things, and you've been through some things with your own family as well.
Mm-hmm.
But I know you're trying to do your best every single day, and it's just fantastic to watch that. And those who are struggling with bipolar, it's a real deal. It's not something that you've made up in your mind, or
Yeah.
it's legit, where you need help, and you need some medication to help you through those things. And
Mm-hmm.
and getting that dialed in can also be a chore as well. But
Yeah.
anyway, to see where you're at right now, it's really remarkable.
Oh, thanks, Todd.
Yeah,
Appreciate that,
I mean,
man.
it truly is.
Thank you.
Yeah. So what, and I know we kind of jumped over a big part there, but I wanted to ask you, what belief systems do you cultivate now about you that help you, that kind of combat maybe kind of what you had, felt when you were younger even? Like, what, can you share some of those beliefs that you have now
Yeah.
when you look, when you think about you in this world now?
Yeah. I think that, a belief system that I have that I constantly play on a loop in my head is just that that hard work pays off, and
And that does describe you. You're a hard worker.
thanks.
I mean,
man.
really, you really are. Like, just constantly doing something and working, and so I like that. Hard work pays off.
Because not everybody's blessed with certain talents, and but talent will only take you so far. You really have to put in the hard work. You got to
Yeah.
put in the effort, and I try and instill that in my family, and with my daughter, and another belief system that I have is to push yourself outside of your comfort zone.
Mm-hmm.
If and obviously this is on the healthy side of
Right.
things. But if somebody asks you to do something that you're not comfortable with, and I really challenge you to look at the reasons why you're not comfortable with that. And if it's a reason that's an insecurity that you have, that's holding you back, then I challenge you to push yourself past that.
Right.
And I know of some of those that I still struggle with that.
Right.
But I try and take those opportunities so that I can grow.
Right.
And I'm grateful for those opportunities.
I love it.
So
I love it. Wow. I mean, I know there's so much more to your story, and we'll probably have to have you on again. Yeah. I mean, can you believe we've been on there already almost 50 minutes? But if you could give some advice to someone who's out there who may be struggling with addiction, or they have bipolar and they've been labeled that, and they're struggling with that even, or any challenge or advice you could give our listeners, what would you tell them?
yeah, something that's helped me through some of my some of the really hardest times that I've been through, and I'd say those have been in the last in the last 3 years or so, and that is, when you've lost hope, let somebody else carry that hope for you. And what I mean by that is, when people come into treatment, they don't have a lot of hope,
Right.
but they're surrounded by a lot of hope, and that carries you. It does. And so
Right.
when you don't have that hope, let somebody else carry that for you for the moment,
Right.
and push yourself
Yeah.
along, you know, and push yourself to be uncomfortable and you know, keep looking and keep, you know, if you're not, if look at where you are, you're struggling, and just, you know, get outside yourself and ask for some help.
Yeah.
And yeah, well,
No, I love that. That's great advice. Very good advice, because a lot of people, you know, unfortunately get to a place in their life where they do feel hopeless. And like you said, it's one of those things, like when you were younger, you said you wish you would have spoken out more to your coaches and stuff of what you were going through,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And so, yes, I think that's a great, and I'll just, you know, I'll reiterate that challenge as well on my end, is like, reach out to someone if you're struggling, let them hold that hope and give you that hope for a minute until you start regaining that back, because you have it in you. You just have forgotten because of the hard times you've been going through.
I remember you telling me that I was sitting in this exact spot, and you'd say, "You're here. You're here," and that means that you made the choice to be here, you know, and you're carrying that hope, you know, for
right,
and you carry that hope for a lot of people, you know,
right.
and so I mean,
I admire anyone who comes to treatment. It's not an easy thing to do,
right,
and it's probably the last thing they want to do, even though that deep down they know they need the help, but they still don't want to come here and put their life on hold, so to speak.
Yeah.
But they're going to die if they don't.
Right.
But yeah, I mean, I had the opportunity to work with you a little bit as well, like we talked about, and to see how hard you worked. I mean, it was one of the things, hard work pays off. You've been working hard for, 3 years now, you know, to overcome it's not really the addiction piece. It's more of the belief system and the thinking and getting your life dialed in exactly where it should be.
Yeah.
And you've worked hard, dude. And that's why you are where you're at today.
Thanks, man.
Yeah.
I appreciate that.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I think the world of you, Phil. I really do. I admire you in so many ways. And I know so many people around here would say the same thing. You know, when we're up in house meeting and this and that, you know, clients will say, man, that Phil, I love, man, that guy's just smiling, working hard, doing everything. It's just great to watch him go. He's kind of like this silent, you know, example of what greatness really is. So, and that was said in last week's house meeting, actually.
Really?
Yeah, truly. So keep up what you're doing, man, because people are noticing.
Thanks, man. I love you, Todd.
Love you too, brother. And thank you for taking the time to share this story. Listeners, thanks for your support. Veracity Networks, thanks for your sponsorship. And please share this with anyone who might be struggling with an addiction, or, you know, whether they've been diagnosed with bipolar or just any other diagnosis that they might be struggling with. And this podcast, this Belief Cast, and Phil's story will inspire them to push forward and start working hard.
If people want to reach out,
yes,
do they have can they reach out to you?
Yeah, they can reach out to me. If you're comfortable, could they reach out to you? Is there a way
Sure.
that they could do that? How would they do that to get a hold of you?
Yeah, you can email me at timelessautoworks@gmail.com, and that's works is spelled WERKS. So if I can help you anyway, I'm more than happy to do so, and I know Todd is as well. So
yeah, please reach out. And if I know Phil's one of those guys that would sit down and even talk with you if you want to just get more. And please do, man. And we've had several people reach out to previous guests, and it's been remarkable. It's really cool we've got this community. I mean, I think we're up to 40,000 downloads.
That's amazing.
It's really cool.
That is really cool.
And so that just means these stories need to be told, and they need to be shared and heard, because it's inspiring and people out there need help. So
yeah.
So thank you again.
Yeah.
Check us out on iTunes and Google Play and Stitcher and YouTube and Twitter. We're everywhere. And Phil, thank you so much for the time.
Thanks, Todd.
I bet you. Love you, brother.
Love you too, man.